Jake Taylor reports new. Trump weighing Noam's ouster at Homeland Security. Stephen Miller is leading the charge. Miller's frustration is twofold, a White House official said. Noam isn't moving fast enough to build out more detention centers with the money approved in Trump's big summer spending bill. Multiple governors have called Trump personally and voiced frustration with Noam's handling of FEMA and disaster relief funds. CNN first reported of Noam's possible
trouble in paradise. That's not just a clever phrase. That's the actual state of Donald Trump's presidency right now. That's what's happening inside Trump's White House. That's the reality of the MAGA movement as we speak. Everyone is turning on each other. Knives are out, and the circular firing squad has assembled. And you want to know why? Because there is no grounding principle in this entire political movement besides personal loyalty to Donald Trump himself. There's no ideology, no consistent values, no coherent policy vision, just fealty to one man. So when that loyalty begins to dry up, when Trump starts questioning people or they start questioning each other, everything else collapses too. People turn on each other instantly because there's nothing else holding them together. By the way, I am trying to do my best to gather all the information I can for you and share it with you. Please leave your likes and comments, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. Let's continue. And it's happening right now in the White House with Trump's right-hand man, his shadow president, Stephen Miller. A firing scandal is going public as we speak, and we're going to dive deep into what this means for Miller and the entire corrupt apparatus he's built. But first, let me set the stage by talking about the other firing rumor that's exploding right now, the one surrounding Pete Hegseth. Because with all the chaos, all the criminality going on in this administration, Hegseth should absolutely be getting fired. The question is whether Trump has the backbone to actually do it. Lawrence O'Donnell laid out the case perfectly when he talked about those boat strikes in the Caribbean. These are the kinds of boats you see being used for fishing or water skiing very close to shore or on totally calm lakes. These are among the smallest boats ever attacked by the American military or any military anywhere in the world. These boats are too small to carry even a ton of cargo. Remember that detail because it's about to become extremely relevant. Now here's where the hypocrisy reaches levels that would be comical if it wasn't so enraging. Donald Trump pardoned a drug trafficker who was responsible for delivering over 400 tons of cocaine into the United States and got convicted for it. 400 tons, not the theoretical 1 ton these tiny boats couldn't even carry. 400 tons that provably made it to American streets and destroyed communities. There is nothing more Trump could do to prove that he absolutely does not care about drug trafficking. Nothing. He doesn't really care about it at all, and pardoning the biggest drug dealers in history proves that beyond any doubt. Trump proudly proclaimed that he doesn't know anything about the drug dealer he pardoned or the criminal case against that dealer that was proven to the satisfaction of an American jury. When a reporter confronted him about pardoning former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez despite his conviction in a massive international drug trafficking scheme, Trump's response was peak Trump. He claimed he doesn't know Hernandez, knows very little about him except people said it was an Obama-Biden setup where Hernandez was framed. Think about that logic for a second. Trump admits he knows nothing about this person or the case, but he's absolutely certain it was a political setup by previous administrations. He said Honduras deals in drugs like probably every country, and because Hernandez was president, they gave him 45 years in prison. Some very good people Trump knows think Hernandez was treated horribly and asked for the pardon, so Trump just did it. When asked if this might send the wrong message to drug dealers, Trump said he doesn't think so. Unfortunately, the reporter didn't ask Trump to name a single person who recommended this pardon. So we have no idea what the real story is, but you can bet some friends of Trump are connected to it. They were obviously making money in that transaction as lawyers representing Hernandez. We'll find out eventually who benefited, but Trump certainly isn't volunteering that information. There was zero follow-up questioning about the specifics. And according to the rationale Trump just offered, every single person prosecuted by the federal government during the Biden presidency or the Obama presidency deserves a Trump pardon right now. Every drug dealer, every criminal, because apparently those justice departments were incapable of doing fair prosecutions according to Trump. So by his logic, pardon them all. Of course we know Trump is lying. every word about that pardon is a lie. Trump will never reveal the real reason he pardoned this major drug trafficker or who told him to do it. And that former president now faces new charges in Honduras after Trump's pardon. The Washington Post reports that Hernandez is wanted for money laundering and fraud connected to allegations that his 2013 political campaign used stolen public funds. The criminality is clear. There's no covering it up. There's no distracting us with culture wars or manufactured outrage. It's simply not going to work this time. But here's what's crucial. Hegseth has admitted to the boat strike killings. Caroline Leavitt has admitted to them. Trump has admitted to them. And Christine Noem, who I want to talk about because she's important context for the Stephen Miller story, she's admitted to defying court orders. There needs to be an understanding that accountability is coming for all of these people. This is a save your texts, save your emails, save your photos, save your documents moment in history. If they think they can get away unscathed and not face accountability, they have another thing coming. Because it's not just accountability from the law, which should be happening but seems uncertain. It's accountability from their own president, the guy who demands loyalty above all else but isn't loyal to the people beneath him. That's the lesson people in the White House are learning right now, whether it's Stephen Miller or Christine Noem or anyone else in Trump's orbit. Jake Tapper reports new developments. Trump is weighing Noem's ouster at Homeland Security, and Stephen Miller is leading the charge. Miller's frustration is twofold, according to a White House official. First, Noem isn't moving fast enough to build out more detention centers with the money approved in Trump's big summer spending bill. Second, multiple governors have called Trump personally and voiced frustration with Noem's handling of FEMA and disaster relief funds. CNN first reported the possibility of Noem's ousting. So we've got a very interesting dynamic at play here. On one hand, you have the possible firing of Christine Noem, potentially the first real domino to fall in this administration. But on the other hand, you have to ask, how loyal is Donald Trump to Stephen Miller? How happy is he really with Miller's illegal and immoral immigration agenda that has not only failed to be successfully carried out, but has also failed spectacularly in the court of public opinion? Trump consistently touted immigration as the issue that put him over the edge in the 2024 election. He claimed this is what he won on. This was his mandate. But now, for the first time in recent memory, Republicans are underwater on immigration. The public has turned against their approach. So how happy can Trump actually feel with Stephen Miller's performance? How much advice is he taking from Miller right now? And what type of wedge does this create in the White House if Miller is speaking ill of Noem to Trump, while Noem is speaking ill of Miller to Trump? This is palace intrigue at its finest, and honestly, I love it. Let them fight. Let's keep this going as long as possible. Let's keep talking about it and exposing it, because this is the stuff they so badly want to hide but just can't. Internal warfare and backstabbing. That's the theme of the Trump presidency right now. Jen Psaki broke down Trump's cover-up patterns perfectly. We know Trump loves to gaslight. Given his behavior, he must also love elaborate cover-ups because he's very into them. And we know this because every time there's a story he doesn't like and doesn't want to talk about, he does some version of the following. First, when possible, he says he knows nothing about it. How often have we heard that? Constantly. Second, he makes up a fake reason why information can't be released, using big government bureaucratic terms that don't make any sense. Third, he calls it fake news and begs people to stop paying attention. Fourth, he pretends the bad news is actually good news, which is one of my personal favorites. And when none of that works, he does everything in his power to cut off the public's access to new information about the very thing he's trying to cover up. He's been doing this for a very long time. We've seen this pattern play out over and over. Remember during his first administration when Trump refused to release his tax returns? He claimed he had nothing to hide and repeatedly promised to release them at a later date. But whenever anyone pressed him to actually make them public, he resisted. First claiming his taxes were under audit, then fighting all the way to the Supreme Court to try blocking their release. None of that is the behavior of someone with nothing to hide. And we're seeing the same pattern with his medical records. Trump claims that concerns about his declining health are made up and that he's actually in excellent shape. According to his doctors, he's roughly the same height and weight as Patrick Mahomes and Chris Hemsworth. Yeah, those guys, the elite athletes you can see on your screen. But at the same time, Trump was cagey about his recent hospital visits and MRI, claiming he didn't even know what part of his body doctors were scanning. And the doctor's letter the White House released about Trump's tests was deliberately vague on details. Trump's elaborate efforts to obfuscate and conceal the truth often backfire because his attempts to cover things up are so ham-handed that they make it clear there's something he's hiding that we should know about. We just watched this play out with the Epstein files. Despite intense public interest in seeing them released, and despite his own promise to release them, Trump refused to make the Epstein files public. He repeatedly downplayed their importance while calling the issue a distraction and a hoax. Listen to Trump try to dismiss the Epstein files. He said he doesn't want Epstein to detract from the great success of the Republican Party. They keep bringing it up to deflect from the tremendous success of the Trump administration. When you talk about the Epstein hoax, you're not talking about how well they've done. Nobody's going to talk about their achievements because they'll talk about Epstein instead. Trump even said he doesn't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody, calling it pretty boring stuff. There you go. The Epstein files are just a distraction from all their success in winning. That's the spin. But here's the thing. Trump could have just released the files on his own at any time. All of his efforts to suppress them only generated more interest and more questions. The pressure eventually became so overwhelming that nearly every member of Congress voted to force the release of those files. Now we're seeing a similar dynamic play out with Trump's boat strikes in the Caribbean. For months, the Trump administration has been engaged in potentially illegal airstrikes on what they claim are drug smuggling boats from Venezuela. In just the past week, scrutiny of those strikes intensified after it was revealed that the Pentagon fired a second strike to kill shipwreck survivors, which could constitute a war crime. Trump started responding to the scandal using one of his favorite tactics, saying he doesn't really know anything about it, claiming it's someone else's problem, while simultaneously acting like he's going to be transparent. Here he was being asked about it just 6 days ago. A reporter noted he released video of the first boat strike on September 2nd, but not the second video, and asked if he'd release video of that strike so the American people could see for themselves. Trump responded that he doesn't know what they have, but whatever they have, they'd certainly release it, no problem. He doesn't know what they have, but he'd be willing to release whatever they have. No problem at all. Except since Trump made those comments, the calls to release the video have only grown, and some Republicans have now joined those calls. One said they'd release it, that the American people would like to see it. Another said they're okay with it being released, that they need to get any videos that don't compromise mission integrity out there. In addition to calls for release, some lawmakers are now planning to withhold a portion of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's travel budget until the video is released, really hitting him where it hurts with that travel budget restriction. But the point is that Trump will stop at nothing to cover up wrongdoing in this administration. We saw last night Trump literally tweeting that it would be seditious or treasonous to cover his health issues, to point out that our almost 80-year-old president is in cognitive and physical decline. Trump wants to jail people for reporting on his health. So, of course, cover-ups are at the heart of everything this administration does. Let me bring this back to the Stephen Miller and Christine Noem situation, because it perfectly encapsulates the dysfunction consuming this White House. You've got Miller, who's supposed to be the immigration czar, the architect of Trump's signature issue, pushing for Noem's firing. He's telling Trump she's not moving fast enough on detention centers, that governors are complaining about her FEMA handling. But Miller's own track record is terrible. His policies have been struck down in courts repeatedly. His approach has turned public opinion against Republicans on immigration for the first time in years. His detention center plans have been humanitarian disasters and legal nightmares. So when Miller goes to Trump and says Noem needs to go, what's Trump supposed to think? Is this good advice from his trusted advisor, or is this Miller trying to deflect from his own failures by throwing someone else under the bus? And when Noem presumably defends herself to Trump and points out all the ways Miller's agenda has crashed and burned, who is Trump supposed to believe? This is what happens when you build an administration based solely on personal loyalty rather than competence or shared values. Everyone's constantly positioning themselves, protecting their territory, attacking rivals. There's no team working toward common goals. There's just individuals trying to stay in Trump's good graces while sabotaging everyone else. And Trump loves this dynamic in some ways. He likes playing people off each other, keeping everyone insecure and competing for his favor. But it also means nothing gets done effectively. Policy becomes secondary to palace intrigue. Governance takes a back seat to gossip and backstabbing. The country suffers while they fight among themselves. Christine Noem admitted to defying court orders on immigration enforcement. That should be disqualifying. That should result in her immediate firing and potential prosecution. But in Trump world, breaking the law to implement Trump's agenda is seen as loyalty, as toughness, as doing whatever it takes. Until Trump decides it's not working, then suddenly you're the problem and you need to go. Hegseth admitted to the boat killings, admitted to strikes that legal experts say likely constitute war crimes, admitted to hiding video evidence, admitted to executing shipwreck survivors. He should be fired, prosecuted, held accountable under military justice. But Trump backs him because Hegseth is loyal and because admitting the strikes were wrong would mean admitting Trump authorized something illegal. Caroline Leavitt admitted the administration knew about the second strike, confirmed it happened, defended it as necessary. She's complicit in the cover-up and the war crimes, but she keeps her job because she's willing to go on television and lie for Trump with a straight face. This is the administration we're dealing with. Criminals protecting criminals, liars covering for liars. Everyone scrambling to stay in Trump's favor while Trump himself becomes increasingly erratic and desperate as his approval crumbles and his agenda fails. The Stephen Miller versus Christine Noem fight is just one example of the broader collapse. But it's instructive because it shows how fragile this whole operation is. One person whispers the wrong thing in Trump's ear, and suddenly someone who seems secure is on the chopping block. One policy failure gets blamed on the wrong person, and heads roll. There's no stability, no loyalty that runs both directions, no sense that people are safe if they do their jobs well. Miller is leading the charge to oust Noem, but how long until someone leads the charge to oust Miller? His immigration agenda has been a disaster by any objective measure. Courts have blocked major parts of it. Public support has collapsed. Republicans are underwater on the issue for the first time in memory. How long until Trump decides Miller is the problem and needs to go? How long until someone else in the White House sees an opportunity and starts whispering to Trump about Miller's failures? This is the inevitable result of authoritarian organizational structure. Everyone lives in fear. Everyone attacks everyone else preemptively. Nobody trusts anyone. The only currency is loyalty to the leader, but that loyalty is conditional and can evaporate instantly. It's not a functional way to run a business, let alone a government, let alone the most powerful government in the world. And while they're all fighting each other, while Miller is trying to get Noem fired, and Noem is presumably trying to undermine Miller, and everyone else is positioning themselves for whatever comes next, the actual work of government isn't getting done. Or when it is getting done, it's being done illegally, unconstitutionally, in ways that harm people and violate rights and undermine democracy. The boat strikes continue. The cover-up continues. The pardons of major drug traffickers continue. The defiance of court orders continues. The attacks on press freedom continue. The dismantling of governmental institutions continues. And nobody in the White House is focused on actually governing or serving the American people because they're all too busy fighting each other and trying to survive another day in Trump's chaotic orbit. Jen Psaki was right about the pattern. Trump knows nothing. Then he makes up reasons information can't be released. Then he calls it fake news. Then he pretends bad news is good news. Then he cuts off access to information. We're seeing it with his medical records, his tax returns, the Epstein files, the boat strike videos, everything. It's the same playbook every time because it's the only playbook he has. But it's not working anymore, or at least it's not working as well as it used to. People have seen this too many times. The credibility is gone. When Trump says he knows nothing about something, we know he's lying. When he says information will be released, we know he's stalling. When he calls something a hoax, we know it's probably true and damaging. The patterns are too obvious, the contradictions too blatant. And internally, his own people are turning on each other because they've figured out that loyalty to Trump doesn't mean Trump is loyal to them. Miller is learning this as he watches his agenda fail and resistance build. Noam is learning this as Miller tries to get her fired. Hegseth will learn it if and when Trump decides he's too much of a liability to keep around. They all eventually learn it, but usually too late to save themselves. Trouble in paradise. That's the perfect description of Trump's White House right now. A paradise built on lies, corruption, personal loyalty, and authoritarian impulses. And trouble because none of it can be sustained. The lies collapse under scrutiny. The corruption gets exposed. The personal loyalty evaporates when things go wrong. The authoritarian impulses run into constitutional constraints and judicial pushback, so they fight each other, blame each other, try to survive by throwing others under the bus, and we get to watch it unfold, document it, expose it, hold them accountable, even when the law and Congress won't. This is the reality of Trump's presidency. This is what MAGA actually looks like behind closed doors. Chaos, backstabbing, cover-ups, criminality, and everyone desperately trying to stay afloat while the whole operation slowly implodes. Miller wants Noam gone. Maybe he'll succeed. Maybe Trump will fire her and bring in someone even worse. But that won't fix the fundamental problems with Miller's agenda or Trump's approach. It'll just be another name, another person who will eventually get thrown under the bus when things don't work out. The cycle continues until it can't anymore, until the whole corrupt apparatus collapses under the weight of its own dysfunction and illegality. And in the meantime, we keep calling it out. We keep documenting it. We keep demanding accountability even when it seems like none is coming. Because eventually, whether through elections or investigations or historical judgment, there will be a reckoning. All of these people will have to answer for what they did, for the lies they told, for the laws they broke, for the damage they caused. Save your texts, save your emails, save your documents. That's what I said earlier, and it bears repeating. Everyone in this administration should be preserving evidence right now because accountability is coming. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. And when it does, all of this internal warfare, all of these betrayals, all of this corruption, it's all going to come out. The texts between Miller and Trump about ousting Noam, the emails about covering up the boat strike videos, the documents about pardoning major drug traffickers, all of it. Trump thinks he can gaslight his way through this. He thinks he can cover up evidence, attack critics, silence whistleblowers, and emerge unscathed. But history suggests otherwise. Every authoritarian who thinks they're untouchable eventually discovers they're not. Every cover-up eventually unravels. Every web of lies eventually collapses. And when that happens with Trump, when the full scope of this administration's criminality and corruption becomes undeniable, all of these people fighting each other right now will have a choice. Try to protect Trump and go down with him, or save themselves by telling the truth about what really happened. My bet is most of them will choose self-preservation. Miller will flip on Trump if it saves him. Noam will testify if it means avoiding prison. Hegseth will give up everything if it means not facing war crimes charges. Because that's what happens when you build an organization on personal loyalty rather than shared principles. The loyalty is conditional and transactional. It lasts exactly as long as it benefits the person providing it. The moment the costs exceed the benefits, the loyalty evaporates and everyone scrambles to save themselves. Trouble in paradise indeed. The paradise was always an illusion, a facade hiding corruption and chaos. And now the trouble is breaking through, visible for everyone to see. Let them fight. Let them tear each other apart. Let the truth about this administration come out piece by piece, scandal by scandal, firing by firing, because every bit of internal warfare, every leaked story, every public dispute brings us closer to full accountability and the end of this nightmare.